Purple Warriors podcast. I'm your host, Ali Sugars, and thank you for joining us. This podcast is about raising awareness for domestic and family abuse by allowing survivors to share their own journeys to recovery. You will find practical yet powerful information and tools that you can immediately implement into your own journey to recovery. You will also hear information on how you can help someone you suspect may be in a toxic relationship. To support this podcast and get access to amazing bonus content, click Become a Patron for more information. If you have a story to share, reach out to me, Ali F. Sugars, on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. Hosts and guests will often discuss sensitive topics in detail. While this is done with the utmost respect and dignity, this may cause triggers for some listeners. Everyone, I am looking really forward to this episode today because not only am I positive that we are going to gain some incredible information, but I am interviewing today one of my very best friends, Michelle Goldfinch from Sensory Treasures. So welcome, Michelle.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm very excited to be talking to you, and especially what we're going to be talking about. We are going to discuss the topic of how sensory items can help with trauma. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what does the term sensory mean?
Well, sensory, if you go by the dictionary meaning, sensory is an adjective, and it is relating to sensation or the physical senses, transmitted or perceived by the senses. That's what the dictionary tells us. So as in, like, say, sensory input or something like that. For me, when I speak about sensory, it's about the understanding that we have 7 senses. There's sight, smell, taste, hearing, touch, vestibular, and now this word's a beautiful one, proprioception.
Oh, I'm impressed you got that out.
I got it. So sensory is the use of all those senses, and it's how it affects us and our brain and how we react to the uses of those senses. So, like, most people are aware of the first 5 senses because you're taught those early on. But the other 2, so the vestibular, that's the perception of our body in relation to gravity, movement and balance. So being able to walk across a balance beam, and that's where that system comes into play. And I always love telling a story about my son Joshua, who's autistic. His vestibular is pretty good because I can remember taking him to a gymnastics which his sister was going to one day, and turned our back for 5 seconds and someone said, "Oh, where's Joshua?" And there he was running across a balance beam. I think he was about 3 years old. It's like, oh, I don't think there's a problem there.
And I know Joshua very well, and I can picture that.
Yeah. So the other proprioception is the sense of where your body is positioned in space. So this is like used for like clapping your hands with your eyes closed and things like that. So and a lot of young children that I work with don't have the vestibular and proprioception one very much. But that's not such a big thing with PTSD and trauma that I've seen anyway.
So just a question on that, this is more out of curiosity for me. As you know, I have an uncle who's autistic, and he likes to use his hands to go like this quite often. Is that the type of thing that you're talking about?
Not really. That's more of what we call a stim. That's a stimulation thing, and that's something that grounds them, I suppose, stimulation. Some people will do clicking in their mouth. Some might do, I know a girl that she dances, that's her self-stimulation, and that just helps her calm and her anxieties and that. So, you know, people with trauma and PTSD some of them will stimulate or self-stimulate like that themselves, because it's just something that makes them more aware of where they are and what they're doing.
Right. So you've probably half already answered my next question then, which is, for trauma and PTSD sufferers specifically, tell us how it affects their brains, or our brains, I should say.
Okay, so this is a big one. PTSD and trauma it fundamentally changes the brain structure and alters the working of the brain. People with PTSD or trauma are often on edge. Sometimes something quite small will cause a flashback. And this is where they feel as if they're back at the place where and when the trauma happened, the flashback. There are several areas of the brain that differ in PTSD and trauma patients structurally and functionally to what our brain works. So that's the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the, ready for it, ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Did it? These areas are usually, they impact the stress response mechanism in humans. So what that means, if you've got PTSD or trauma, a patient continues to perceive and respond to stress very differently to someone who's not suffering from them. So the most significant neurological impact is in the hippocampus, and that's responsible for our memory functions. So PTSD trauma patients, they've got a big reduction in the volume of their hippocampus. So they have a lot of trouble with their memories. And it also, the hippocampus tells us the difference between past and present memories. So people with PTSD and trauma find it hard to discriminate between the two. Hence, they might get triggered by a smell or colour, even if that smell or colour hadn't been at the original trauma. The memory just doesn't play into it very much well. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex is a space that regulates the emotion responses that your amygdala triggers. So specifically negative emotions. Hello, fear. Hence why PTSD and trauma patients exhibit fear and anxiety and extreme stress sometimes over something that could maybe not even be connected to the past traumas. Trauma seems to increase the activity of the amygdala, and because the part of the brain helps process emotions, it's also linked to our fear responses. So these patients exhibit hyperactivity in their amygdala. And so if they're confronted with something that's associated with the trauma, sometimes their fear response will just continue, and it continues and continues. So they're forever at that heightened, which I just don't like. You just don't know how they can live in that heightened response. It's not good for the body at all.
No, I'm very lucky to say that's not me, but
yeah,
I don't envy anyone who has that.
Yeah, there's research being done though that says the brain changes caused by trauma, PTSD, increase the likelihood of a person developing other psychotic and mood disorders. But scientists have also found that by looking into the pathophysiology of PTSD, they've also realised that the disorder is reversible, which is great. So we do this at school with children. The human brain can be rewired. In fact, drugs and behavioural therapies have been known to increase the volume of the hippocampus. Part of the behavioural therapies involve sensory and fidget items being integrated into patients' lives, and the patients then learning how to use them best to support themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's lots of research being done, and we can only hope that they get more and know that, look, it'd be really good if they didn't even have to be on drugs. It could be done through, say, behavioural stuff and that.
It really would. And I know that, you know, as with a lot of things, you know, even mental illness and mental disorders now, as I've said quite regularly, you know, it used to have quite a stigma on it, but not so much now, you know, with Are You OK Day and Beyond Blue and all the information out there. PTSD is quite the same. You know, I think that there's a lot of developing modalities out there that are able to help people with PTSD and those who've suffered trauma.
Craig and I just did a mental health first aid course.
Yes.
And that was very, very interesting. And to all your listeners, if you get a chance to do one, go and do one. It was just amazing, the stuff that we'd be able to help ourselves, but what we're going to be able to help through work and stuff like that. It's, just amazing. And that was one of the things we talked about, that it's now out there more. And like back in the days, you would never say, like, for myself, I'm bipolar. I've never hidden it. I'm quite open about it. The same with my son's autism. Always been out and about with it, because to me, the more people know, acceptance helps and that sort of thing. So, but we were saying that beforehand, people never mentioned mental health because you could lose your job over something like that, you know, and people would go, oh, no, don't want to work with her, she's going to go off her tree, sort of thing. But it's not like that anymore.
And I appreciate, I personally, you know, I mean, yes, I know you personally, but I've always appreciated that about you, is that you have never hidden your bipolar. You've never hidden Josh's, or been, not necessarily hidden it, but be ashamed of it. And why should you be ashamed of it? Because, you know, you are who you are.
Well, and as Joshua tells everyone, he's awesometism.
That's great.
He's awesometism.
I'm using
a new word. You can just tell, and he goes up and says, yes, I'm awesometism. I love him.
I'm using that. Okay, so
go for it.
Right then, my darling. So tell us about your specific products with sensory treasures and what they can be used for.
I create sensory and educational products for all ages for what I call neurodivergent. Neurodivergent means having a brain that functions in ways that diverge significantly from the dominant societal standards of normal.
Love it.
So, a question I hear a lot is, what's normal? Well, normal is different for everyone. So for me, neurodivergent covers a wide range of people, disabilities, diff-abilities, as I like to say. And one of my parts of my business is selling fidget toys. So these are usually something that's small, helps people concentrate on what's happening, or it can bring someone back to what's happening around them. Fidget toys are becoming more widely used in schools as we start to get more research about their use and the good that they can do. But like everything, they need to have rules around their use wherever they are. A teacher I work with has a box of fidgets and sensories, and she has what she calls fidget widget rules. Now, if you go online to Google and put in fidget widget rules, it'll come up with little cards. The rules are fidgets small, keeping your hands busy, but you have to pay attention to the teacher while that's happening. It gets held in your hands, you can move, feel or play with it, but you always look at the teacher. Fidgets are good to use if you're having trouble concentrating or if you keep touching things around you in class. So number one rule is always eyes on the teacher. Can't use the fidget to get your friend's attention, like, guess what? And it must stay in your hands or on your desk at all times. And if these rules are put in place at the beginning with children in a classroom, the kids then listen, otherwise they abuse the system. So one of my fidgets that I love using is one of these. It's right, and you can fold it into a little thing, and then it undoes the other way, and then it folds, and then it undoes. And I've been having so much trouble sitting here playing with this while I'm talking to you.
And let me show you. Well, you know that I bought this from you a few years ago when I was going through my own significant, let's say, trauma. And this is a fidget cube what you were talking about. And you know, I love the fact that it is small.
Yep.
I can hold it in my hand. You know, and I remember having it on my desk at work, and you know, and I also had a choice whether we could get bright coloured ones or we could get the grey. Now I'm personally would normally buy a bright coloured, but I deliberately bought the grey one because it could sit on my desk and it was unobtrusive, and I didn't necessarily want people to know that I needed it.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
And I love it. You know, even my son, when I brought it home, my son nabbed it from me because he must be sensitive.
Oh, yeah.
But I nabbed it back. So.
Well, the other sort of products that I sell are more sensory items, and these could be weighted toys, lap bags. It might be a sensory calm bag, so that's a small bag or a large bag with very sensory items in it. You know, it could be materials, could be chenille sticks, it could be anything like that. Another fun item that I do is earmuffs for children who don't like crowds or loud noises. Very good. Diffusers and essential oils can also be used for sensory help. Essential oils can be worn on the body with a carrier oil or on jewellery or diffused into the air. And I think these are they're great for adults and for people with PTSD or trauma. It's something that can be a really good start in helping them get back to calmness. Something as simple as lavender.
I'm going to totally back you up there because I have my essential oils going in the background, as you can see. And it's just something that I need on a constant daily basis to just ground me, you know. I also have my essential oil bracelet where you can pop them in, you know, pop drops on the little black bead. And as I said, it's just something that really grounds me. And it was, apart from, you know, the little fidget cube, it was one of the first, and it still remains one of the main ways that I deal with any trauma and sensory issues that I have myself. So totally backing you up on that one.
It's so natural. It's so natural too. Yeah. So, like, that's great for adults. For kids, I've done sensory walking tiles. So each tile will have a different type of material, like velvet, bubble wrap, sandpaper, fluffy cleaning sponges sort of thing. Great for babies. They can crawl across them. And children and older teens, if you get them to take their shoes off, they can walk across them. I love the idea of a tile with bubble wrap on it to put under your desk, and I reckon, can you imagine? And that time yourself to try and not pop all the bubbles, see how long you could go. Yeah, I think that'd be great. There's so much more, but we could be here all day. So I do the bouncy gym balls, the big balls. They're great for seats or the kids that just can't sit still. I have wobbly bobbly cushions, is what I call them. They're a vinyl cushion with small lumps across it, and you fill it with air. You can then put it on a chair or on the floor, and children or adults can sit on it and get a massage. In a school situation, we use it for those kids that can't sit still and keep going like that on their seats. And I always adding to my products. And I also do chewy toys and that for kids that have to have something in their mouth or like to bite. If we try and get them chew necklaces before they bite the child next to them. So, but we also do chew things for the ends of pencils. Now, if that's something like that's good for adults either too. So if someone finds they're chewing down pencils or pens or their fingers or stuff like that, to get something like a, at present I've got brick ones. They look, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but they look like Lego. bricks and they're silicon. That word. So they go on the end of the pencil, and so that you can just chew on that instead of chewing on your fingers or stuff like that. So yes, I'm always on the lookout. And if someone sees something and I don't have it and they just talk to me, I usually can find it.
Or figure out how to make it. And that is very important.
Or figure out how to make it.
So I know you've talked a lot about children.
Yep.
Now, tell us, is there any difference between adults and children in sensory items? And yeah.
Well, it depends on who you talk to, Ali. Some experts say there is, and some say there isn't. All adults and children are different, and what works for one person won't for another. What I've found is that adults and older children seem to want the more discreet fidgets that we were talking about before, and sensory items. Where for a child, I'd make, say, a weighted toy, and they might have like I've just finished making an elephant and an octopus, weighted elephant and octopus. But an adult would look for a weighted blanket to use on their bed or to use when they're in front of TV. And the same goes for fidgets. Kids like the little things like the visual timers, puzzle balls, and the spinners and stuff like that. An adult would look more at something that can sit on their desk unobtrusively, like you were saying, or something like fidget beads on a key ring, or little fidget cubes that can sit in their pocket, be played with in the pocket if needed. Personally, I love any sort of fidget, and it doesn't worry me if anyone sees it either. I believe people need to stop judging. If a person needs to sit at a lunch table and spin a spinner, how is that different to you sitting there playing on your phone? The person with the spinner is probably paying more attention to what's going around because it's a sort of a mindless thing than that person on the phone going, oh, sorry, you're still sitting there. So, yeah, it depends.
Brilliant. I love that. I absolutely love that analogy when you say, how is it different to playing on your phone? And actually, I tried that the other night because I am a person who I do like to sit, at night, watch the TV, but I'm always playing on my phone. And I tried to make a point of putting my phone down, and I grabbed my little fidget and I sat there playing with it. And I got to say, I actually had a lot more fun, and I took more in.
Yes.
And I was just more alert altogether, just sitting there playing with my little fidget. I loved it.
Yeah. I've find, and this goes into my bipolar a bit, when I'm in a bit of a manic state, I will watch TV and I'll have my phone and I'll be doing something else too. And I did a lot of thinking at the beginning of the year, looking at the rest of the year, what I'm going to do for 2020. And I thought, that's it. If I sit to watch TV, I'm going to just watch TV. I'm going to start trying to take that, not multitask as much, and see if that helps with my sleep and helps other things. I'm still having trouble doing it, but it's something that I'm really trying to work on, because I've been doing some reading on it and they're saying how you need to try and stop multitasking. Everything has always been multitask. Now everyone multitasks and they're not doing one job properly, sort of thing. So it's, how true is that? I'm trying to do 3 or 4 things at once and not one of them's getting done.
I hear you there, sister. I hear you there. So tell me, again, how would these products help someone maybe specifically suffering from or recovering from trauma in itself, and again, PTSD?
Well, I believe that fidgets and sensory items can help everyone. That's my belief. But people with PTSD and trauma have their brain running on overdrive. That's the beauty of these items. They can help bring the brain back from 200% to 100% running. Will they work for everyone? No. Some people just see them as toys, and nothing I say or you say will change their minds. But it's really like a growth mindset thing. Do I think that a weighted toy cat will help a child who is recovering from trauma? If that child loves cats, I believe that that child will enjoy holding the cat. I believe that cat will help the child calm down and focus. Will the cat help the child overcome the trauma? No way. It takes many people working together and different types of therapies to help that child get to a space where they can cope better in the world around them. They may never get over that trauma.
Mm.
So I would love to get fidgets and sensory items into every house in Australia. With the amount of screen time kids and adults are having now, we haven't learned how to relax properly. And sometimes sitting there flipping a small infinity cube around is very relaxing. And it gives your mind something to think about that isn't blowing up worlds or killing people, which a lot of our children are doing all the time.
That is so true.
Yep.
I am so impressed by, not only the information that you shared with us today, I am so impressed with what you do. Not only, do you make toys for adults and children, but also, like you said, if someone comes to you with a specific need, that you will make it to their specifications, and I love that you don't just stick with what you've got. You're always, like you said, you're always prepared to try new things, because we are all individual, and what's going to help one person might not help another. And I really appreciate that about what you do. And you do put a lot of hard work into it. I know you do. I've watched you do it.
And I'm also I've decided myself now that I don't make the weighted bed blankets anymore, because I can't do them for the price that some people can. And I would rather concentrate on the stuff I'm really enjoying doing and can really help people with. So I know of people that are doing them. So if someone comes to me, I say, go to these people. I they're running a small business, help them out, sort of thing. That, to me, I would rather do that than say, oh yeah, I can do that, and not do the quality that I would like in my products. So, and they are buggers to make, the big ones.
That's it. It's all about helping someone out, isn't it? So that's the main priority in looking after these people.
Yeah.
So
I think that's what I love about women in business, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So, speaking of women in business, share with our listeners where they can find you, or how they can make a purchase from you if they would like to.
Well, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and I'm building a website. But I have a link tree, and everything's on there. So shall I give you that, or shall I say it, or?
I will make sure that the link goes up to the link tree, so people can just go from there. So that'll be, we'll make 100% sure that people have access to that, because what you do, as I said, is absolutely invaluable. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm also, that's okay. I'm also, I'm starting up a newsletter. So go onto the website, and at present, if you're wanting to buy, just give me a message through Facebook, because I've just got to get that website up.
It's all fun, isn't it, setting it all up?
It is.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Again, that's just incredible what you have shared with us today. And I know that there are going to be a lot of people out there listening to this who are going to go, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to be able to use those tools. So thank you again, and we will catch you soon.